Hi, my name is Tamara, and you are watching Things Even a Monkey Should Know. Hello, hello! Thank you so much for joining me again today. As you know, if you've watched some of my other videos, I'm not a professional anything except artist, but I have learned there are a number of things around the house and out in the yard and on my cars that I can do myself and usually save myself time, money, energy, aggravation, and all that other stuff. So I hope that you have saved all of those things now too. Today we are doing part 3 of this concrete pad for this little bistro table and chair set, and today is the day that we are actually doing the mosaic. So this is the part that I've really been looking forward to. It's going to be fun. Let's do it. Number 1, you've waited 28 days before you get to this part, right? I know that it looks like we've only waited a week, but it has actually been 28 days since I poured the concrete, because until 28 days or longer, your concrete could actually still be shrinking and moving a little bit. So if you put something on top of it, then it's possible that your new stuff that you put down, your beautiful mosaic or whatever it is you're putting down, could actually crack. So we don't want to do that. So 28 days at least. Okay, now since I'm outside, I have some cleaning to do before we actually get to the laying of the tiles. So you're going to need a broom if you're doing this outside, probably inside too, just because things do accumulate dust and dirt over the course of a month. Since I am using scrap glass and doing a mosaic, I have a little something to lay my glass out on before I start to put it onto the concrete that I've poured. Now, obviously, you're going to need mortar, and you need to get mortar that's appropriate for whatever you're using. So if you're using tile, get a tile mortar. I guess this does say mosaic glass and tile mortar. This is a little more expensive because it's bright white. If you're doing glass, you definitely want a bright white mortar to go behind it so that the light reflects back through the glass instead of being sucked down into the color of the mortar. You are going to want to have something in which to mix your mortar, and I am not doing the full thing or the full bag all at one time, since I am going to be placing these glass pieces individually. I'm going to be measuring out and doing, like, I don't know, probably a quarter of the bag at a time to make sure it doesn't start to cure before I can finish. So you may want to have a couple of different buckets for that. For mixing, you'll either want to have water, or I always like to use this polymer additive, which just makes the mortar a little bit stronger. You will want to have something with which to mix. If you have one of these mixing attachments, you have a drill, you're going to be set. This is a great way to mix this stuff. You are going to possibly want to just have an additional bucket sitting around, because it's never a bad thing to have an additional bucket. Elvis! You're going to want to have your dog in the background digging a hole behind you so that you'll trip and fall in for the camera. That'll be nice. You're going to want to have a trowel of the appropriate tooth size. For thicker tile, you're going to want a 1/4 inch trowel, probably. For thinner tile, like what I'm using, glass, I'm going to be using an 1/8 inch, just so that I don't get too much mortar down there that squishes up between the pieces of glass. You are going to want to have a 2x4 or some other straight edge to make sure that you get all of your glass level. Because remember, we did get our surface as level as possible, but there's a possibility that it is a little off in some places. You will probably want to have a pair of scissors to open your mortar bag and possibly anything else. And I like to have just a regular trowel around to scoop the mortar out of the bucket. It's much easier scooping mortar out with something like this, or even a regular spoon, I don't care. It's much easier than trying to scoop it out with your notched trowel. Since we're working with this concrete product, we definitely want to have some kind of eye protection. I would say also, at least for the mixing part, you want to have gloves, like nitrile gloves or something, so that you can mix without getting this concrete stuff on your hand. And then last, but certainly not least, you are going to want to have whatever it is that you are mosaicing in here. Now, I was very lucky a few years ago that a neighbor of mine was getting rid of all her stained glass stuff, so she gave me a whole bunch of scrap stained glass, and that's what I'm using today. You could be using scrap tile. You could be using the little tile squares that you can buy at the store. I believe that's all, so let's get started. First thing we're going to do is clean off this dirty concrete that I poured. I didn't mention it a minute ago, but you also want to have probably a towel, a rag towel around. I don't know what for yet, but it seems like it's always a good thing to have. And a bottle of water. I know this says Windex, but it's just water. A spray bottle, I should say. So let's get to mixing this. So I'm going to be doing 1/4 of a bag at a time, which means that I only want 12 ounces, or at least to start, about 12 ounces of this additive, this polymer additive. It's the same amount of this stuff as it is water. I'm going to go ahead and measure this out. So I'm just saying if you're using water, that's not a big deal because it's the exact same amount. And remember that you can always add more of this stuff if you need to. Now I'm mixing it in this bigger bucket. I may wind up wanting to mix more than this at one time, but right now I just want to be safe. And I'm using up an older bag of this first, but there is about 1/4 of the bag left in here. The main thing is you want it to be really smooth and the consistency of a stiff cake batter. So you want to be able to make a peak in this once it's thoroughly mixed. And well, we'll see if we need to add more of the acrylic stuff or water or whatever you're using first. But the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to mix this for 3 minutes. So get yourself a timer and let's mix. So now we're going to let it rest for 5 minutes. So set yourself another timer for 5 minutes because we want to make sure that all of the moisture is fully absorbed by the powder. Now we have 1 more minute of mixing just to be sure that everything is thoroughly mixed. So I am starting from the outer edge and working my way in because I want to make sure that I come up flush with this edge. And the reason that we have the spray bottle full of water is so that we can spray down our concrete, or mist it rather, so that it does not just immediately soak up all of the moisture from our mortar, which you can see that it's soaking up the water pretty quickly. We're also in the sun, which is not ideal, but it's either start in the sun when it's early or work in the afternoon when it's shady but hotter than, well, fill in your word here. So I'm going to slop out some of my mortar. And keep your mortar at your mortar that's waiting to be used. Keep it out of the sun if you're working outside, because the sun will help it to harden up quicker. And right now we don't want to do that. We want to make a nice grooved pattern so that our glass has plenty of room to grab onto the mortar. So now that we have our grooves laid out here, we're going to start laying out our tile. And if you have, let's say that you have a sheet of tile that you're using, well, lucky you, because it's going to go a whole lot faster for you. But this will be worth it for me in the long run. Right now it's going to take a while. So we are just going to fill up this area that we just, we're going to fill this up with tile, this area that we just put down and grooved. And then I'm going to rinse all my tools, I'm going to remix, and we're just going to keep repeating this process until this is complete. a few things I want to point out. The first is that I was so excited to get started on this that I forgot to lay out all my glass beforehand. So you may have seen I misted with my water a few times, because if you need to keep your mortar wet, you can definitely go over it with water. The next is that I am going to scoop up this extra mortar that got out here around the edges, because I don't want it sitting underneath what I try to put down next time. And you see with this, since it's an irregular pattern, I got the edges as straight as possible so that I am not trying to, so that I can just put down another slice of the pie, basically, and I'm not trying to put down an awkward shape. Now the next question, well, the next thing is make sure that you press these in pretty well as you go, and then the next thing is that you want to take your 2x4 and you want to go over them and make sure to press them with your 2x4 so that they are all at approximately the same level. And you see how some of those are squishing up some of the mortar there, because I got the mortar a little too thick in some places. So I can take it and just wipe it off now. And I will come back over it after it's a little more cured, because I really don't want to move everything around a whole lot right now. Now you can also take to do the same thing that I'm doing here, you could take a flat piece of plywood, small, and a mallet, or just your hands, and you can do the same thing. Basically, we're just trying to get everything to be level and even. And using a bigger piece does not necessarily make it work better. A bigger 2x4, a longer 2x4 would definitely have been helpful, but I didn't have one of those today. But I still have everything pretty flat and even.
9 10 9 10
What I'm doing now is I'm just coming back over this with a stiff bristle brush, and I'm getting in only on the parts that are cured. That over there is not cured yet. Let's make that clear. Do not brush the cured parts of your mosaic because they will move. But I am using a stiff bristle brush to help get some of this excess mortar off of these tiles. Notice I'm not leaning on them or putting any weight on them in any way, because even though they're cured, mostly cured, they're still not ready to bear weight yet. Tomorrow I will come back over all of this with a metal bristle brush just to help finish getting the rest of the mortar off of these that's stuck on them, but it's really not too bad, and it's coming off pretty well, except for this part that I got really messy. Otherwise it's coming off pretty well with this brush. It looked like I did that really fast, right? Gosh, if I was just Wonder Woman, then I could have done that as fast as y'all just watched it. So this was actually about an 8.5 to 9 hour day. Not too bad really, because this was a pretty big space and everything was, you know, an irregular shape. Could I have split this into more sessions so that I could have done this for several days? Absolutely. Don't think that you have to do the entire thing in one sitting if you're doing a large mosaic or something similar. You can absolutely break it up into multiple days. I just wanted to get this done because I'm so excited to get it grouted so that we can have a finished project. I think that's all that I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you are having a good time making whatever you are making. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do that now, and feel free to share it also. I really appreciate everybody who has already subscribed and shared. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.